Next, we'll look at Part C, the volumes of liquids and solids, and we'll look specifically at Table 1. So we'll be measuring the volume of liquid water using a few different methods. There is one thing that will be a little bit different from what is showing in this table. Instead of a 100 milliliter graduated cylinder and a 10 milliliter graduated cylinder, we are just going to have a 50 milliliter graduated cylinder. So we will only be making 3 measurements here instead of 4. Let's go ahead and take a look at the objects we'll be measuring with. So we have 3 things here. We have the graduated cylinder over here. We have the beaker right here. And then this is the tip of the burette, which is a very long device, and we'll be taking a closer look at that when we get to that measurement. So we'll be going through making measurements with each of these in turn, where we will focus in on where the liquid is located as we make that measurement. Before we do that, though, I do want to go ahead and review one thing about making these measurements. So I'm going to go back to the start of this document, and we will discuss how to measure the volume of a liquid. And this is on, I believe, the second page of your lab if you want to read through this in more detail. When we measure the volume of a liquid, there's one thing that we have to be aware of, and that is for the a liquid, especially water in a container, the liquid itself is not flat. It has a curve to it. So we can see that in this drawing. We're showing how the liquid will curve down. So there's an upper edge where it's curving up to the edge of the container, and then it's also curving down to the bottom as in the middle. So we need to have a consistent way of making this measurement, and the way we do this is we measure from the bottom. So we measure the volume of a liquid by measuring from the bottom of the meniscus. And as always with any kind of a measurement, we need to guess the last digit. So here we're showing, in this case, it appears that this bottom is exactly on the mark for 30. Well, we have 30 here, then we have 31, 32, etc. So if it's exactly on the 30, we need to guess the last digit. So it's 30, 31, so the next digit would be 0.0, 0.1, 0.2, etc. Exactly on that mark, we would call that 30.0. So that's how we would make that measurement. Okay, so here we are making the measurement for the beaker. So you can see where the water level is. Look again at the bottom of the meniscus, and you have marks there for 10, 20, 30, 40. So be sure to be guessing the last digit for those measurements. Here we have the measure for the graduated cylinder. Again, we are not doing a 10 or a 100. This is a 50 milliliter graduated cylinder. We have a mark here for 20 milliliters. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a mark for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then a mark for 30. So be aware of the marks. Remember to guess the last digit. Remember to read from the bottom of the meniscus. I wanted to say a little bit about this last device before we make the measurement for it. So here we're zoomed out a little bit. This is the burette. The burette is a long, very thin glass tube, and I'm going to kind of scroll up here. So way up here at the top, we have the top, and you might be able to see that, you might not, but the very top marking there is 0. And then as we go down, the numbers are going to get bigger. And we'll talk about this again a bit more when we go to make the measurement. The burette is held in place. This is called a burette holder. So there are 2 clamps. They need to both be secured onto the glass itself. And then that is connected to a stand with a heavy base. Let's see if we can get picture of the base. The heavy base there will keep it in place. So this is the burette. So the main thing I want you to understand related to that is that we are starting with 0 at the top, and then as we go down, the numbers are going to get bigger. And we'll, again, come back to that in a minute. The burette is used to add a liquid very precisely. And so how we use this is we start at the top with a small number, and then as we add, we get a larger number. And you can see at the bottom here, we have this part is called the stopcock. And so we can open and close this to add a very small amount of liquid at a time. We will be using this in another lab later this semester. For today, we want to be able to make the measurement for volume of a burette. Okay, so here's our measure for the volume of a burette. Remember that we are starting at a small number at the top and working to bigger numbers as we go down. So right here we have this longer one that goes all the way across is 42. There's another one right in here that goes part way across is 42.5, and then down here we have one that goes again all the way across is 43. In between those we have some marks for 42.1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And then the 5 is a bit longer, 6, 7, 8, 9. So a couple things here. Remember to, again, be measuring from the bottom of the meniscus, and then also to be guessing the last digit. Next, we'll be measuring the volume of a regular solid block, and we'll be filling this into table 2. So let's go ahead and take a look at the block itself. So here we're showing the block and the ruler that we'll be using. Again, we will be measuring this in units of centimeters. So it says millimeters, but we want to do 1, 2, 3, 4 centimeters, for example, and then the other marks would be 1.1, 1.2, etc. So here is the first measurement. This is a measure of the length of the block. So go ahead and write that one down. Here is the second measurement. This is the measure of the width of the block. And this is the final measurement. This is the measure of the height of the block.